I don't want to scare Max, but I might scare you a little bit. And I don't want to scare you guys. I have a disclosure to make. If you ever met, especially Jani, but if you met any of them, but especially Jani, like, if you are easily offended or you are like very strongly, you have very strong convictions, cover your ears every now and then. Because the idea here is to discuss the future of mobile games and in games and PC and Switch and VR, AR. And we tend, especially when Jani and I are on the same environment, we kind of tend of being extremely realistic, kind of rough, and not say things that people like very much. So just keep it with us. But to start, first of all, could you please, well, introduce yourselves? I know Marcus already did, but just tell who you are.
Yeah, thanks. So, yes, I'm Marcus Pullen. I run a UK studio called Blue Donut Studios, and we make comics, augmented reality, VR, and also traditional games as well, card games.
Hi, everyone. I think Patty introduced me.
She did a lovely job.
I'm Jani, the founder and CEO of Secret Exit. It's an indie company here in Helsinki. We're over 10 years old, and really we just develop the games, self-publish, own our own IP, and try to maintain control in what we do.
All right, hi, I'm Max. It says I'm independent. I am not a developer, to the shock of everyone here. I'm a researcher. I research esports, recently also VR, AR. So if you want to know stuff about esports, game streaming, I'm the right person to ask. If you want to know stuff about Unity or game development, please don't come near me. I'll probably not be able to answer your question at all. So just kind of quick disclaimer here. All right, let's go.
And if you don't know who I am, my name is Patty Toledo. You have been seeing me here all day, but I just realized I never actually introduced myself. I work with Still Media. I'm the person who actually chose these people to be here, all of them in all the rooms. So if you didn't like your speakers, you can punch me afterwards. I'm the one to blame for that. I was a game developer before, was game publisher, and have been working with creative media for many, many years. Let's put it this way, because I don't want to tell away how old I am. And the reason why I put this panel this way is because I wanted to put together people that develop mobile, PC, VR, AR, eSport, that research eSports, and know about different aspects of the development and of research, so they could present to us what is going on and what we should be looking at. So my first question is going to be very, maybe not easy, but very deep, is what do you think are the eminent challenges that we are facing in games, in business, in users and technology?
Well, I think the biggest challenge we face is the business side, and I think it's acquisition, understanding what acquisition is in terms of users, and the business case for developing games. It seems to get every year gets harder and harder, especially when you're an indie. I don't know about for you guys in over here, but in the UK, it's quite a challenge to run a business, and we do other things literally so that we can do the things that we do in games. The idea of the fact that you have to put more and more money into reaching your audience is a scary thing for me.
Go, Jani, kill it.
Go.
Well, yeah. In the short term, running the regular business is becoming more and more challenging. I mean, we're looking at, yes, different difficulties in user acquisition, difficulties in finding influencers, difficulties in finding any sort of discoverability for our titles. In the long run, though, I think the trouble will be, like, how do we develop on hardware that no longer has an electrical grid to maintain it. So, like a PC is a very power-hungry device, and if you're only getting electricity 6 hours a day and that's for essentials, then like you're stuck to running a solar-powered device. You have something attached to a lithium battery, probably something like a Raspberry Pi. And let's say if your if your license service have crashed, then Autodesk's software, Unity, Adobe, they're not there anymore. So yes, you can solve that in the short term by resorting to unofficial means, but if you need to maintain the software and get updates, well, you need to resort back to open software.
Yeah, I'd agree. From our perspective, we can become very reliant on development platforms, and that can bite us in the bum. As you say, energy dependency, but also license costs, the way that large enterprises change their business model. You get dependent, you join, you use tools, and hey, they're free, come on board, yeah, great. Hey, by the way, we're going to, in 5 years, change the license model, and you're going to bust your balls to try and pay the license, and you're going to try and see if you can gain any profit from the revenue that comes through the App Store, and you have to pay 30%. Who could that be?
Yeah, I think in general, no matter how you look at our impending doom of this Earth of ours, I think if you just take like maybe even slightly shorter term view on this, I think kind of this dependability and also predictability is quite difficult. If just looking at the game sector and just looking at what's happened in the last years. So, for example, within the realm of like competitive games, esports, and all that, we have like Fortnite. A lot of people ask me about Fortnite, all from like the people interested in competition to the people interested in like if their kids are playing Fortnite. I've been asked several times by journalists, should Fortnite be banned and stuff like that. And I'm not exactly sure when Fortnite was launched, but it's just amazing that you can have like this game that's so popular right now, has so many users, kind of biggest in the world, and just a few years ago, nobody knew what Fortnite was to everyone. If you ask what is Fortnite, if you're from the UK, it means 2 weeks.
That's right.
That's about it. So it's crazy how much can happen in such a short time in this industry, which is kind of peculiar and doesn't really happen that fast in other industries, even though, of course, the kind of rate of change is accelerating.
Yeah, but the other thing is, Fortnite, is it a game? No, I'm sounding like an old person there, but actually, my definition of what a game is, sometimes I think that Fortnite doesn't actually quite meet it, and maybe, well, I don't. I mean, that's a question, as well as my cynical response, is that have expectations. If we're not careful, expectations of what a game does. What do we get out of it? Are we just lowering the barrier, or are we discovering a new form of art? I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, sorry for that at 5 o'clock.
No, it's I've found that like one thing that I've learned through some decades of playing games is that certainly what we define a game and what we expect from a game has changed on a cultural level. That's certainly true. I mean, let's say that for me, gaming in some way peaked in the late 90s. I mean, we had LucasArts Adventures, we had X-Wing, and like wonderful, deep games. And then we've gone through this slippery slope of casual things, and now we're talking about throwing in terms like hyper casual. I mean, do we really need to create a genre for Flappy Bird? Like, so I find that strange. And of course, in the near future, how we define game is 2 men entering and only 1 leaving.
Exactly.
No, I have a question though. I know that a lot of the talks have been about bigger companies, how they did it, how they made it, how they were successful, what were their recipes, and it's mostly what people want to hear. I would like you, but I know a lot of people here and a lot of people in the conference are actually students or people developing their first game or just doing their first demo, and they are not in the position of discussing how Rovio or Supercell or any other company did. So as we're talking about the future, I would like you to tell a bit, like, what do you think that a person that is starting right now, has nothing, maybe has a friend and two, three people, and they are developing their first game to diverse platforms, what should they be looking at? Like, what is the reality that they are gonna get, like, now and until they can actually succeed? I threw you in the fire.
Well, power, again, will be at a high cost. So whatever you do, I would focus on things that leave as much to the imagination as possible, and something that is probably episodic. Like when your food actually depends on people exchanging goods and services in exchange for the service of entertainment that you provide them. Yeah. You probably want them to come back with the SD card and a bag of apples. And then you can put your game on the SD card and they can experience the next episode. Piracy is really critical at this point. I mean, you're building your loyal fan base is a life and death situation.
I told you he would get apocalyptical today.
So I was going to ask, do you think it's an important factor, like, kind of what kind of mercenaries you hire to protect your convoy when you're going from your, like, development hut to the market? Is that's the key factor here in development, I would say, probably, or logistics?
Absolutely. Again, your development tools are quite primitive. You probably shouldn't run 3D graphics. Again, your audience, they're no longer playing on PCs or consoles because they are too power-hungry devices. The only thing remaining at this point are their slowly rotting Android phones that can sideload software. iPhone users are shit out of luck. They can't sideload.
Yeah, I'd second that. They're screwed, aren't they? And they've got a notch in the top. They're missing bits of the screen. That's nuts.
That's true.
You can make money out of a crappy phone. How does that work? But there's so much truth to what you said about power and apples as well. So, like, if you're going to bring apples and an SD card, make sure those apples are local grown. Why are you selling me apples from miles and miles away? That's CO2. That's ridiculous. Actually, you think about it. Why are we using tools that haven't been community developed? That, for people coming into the industry now, one of the things I would say is be as disruptive as hell. Say no. Say bollocks to things and play everything. Be a games lover first. I think you've got to love games. If you are in it to make money, go away. Because actually it's being centered on making really good games. It doesn't matter if you're using augmented reality, virtual reality, if you're going to incorporate blockchain. You go, hey, can you make a blockchain game? I mean, I can see loads of people who probably could make a blockchain game. Can you make a game that's really good fun? I don't know how many. There might be not so many hands going up, but yeah, I can make a blockchain game. Come on, Jani.
Occasionally I'm sarcastic.
Go ahead,
but the point of this previous thing also is that just like you said, we're dependent on our tools, and that's it's a curse as well as a blessing. Like we're more productive in creating digital entertainment now than we've ever been. I mean, basically in Unity, pardon me for saying this, but you just download assets from the App Store, you drop them in your scene, you press play, and that's it. And
so like PUBG, kind of. It's the first time I saw PUBG, I didn't know what the game was. I just saw someone streaming it, and I was like, man, so you can make like a successful streamed game by just downloading stuff from the asset store? Because that's how it looked. It looked really like, in my eyes, kind of unpolished and exactly like you would, one of those top 10 free items, kind of big batch of military themed stuff that you can then just throw in. And it sounds just familiar if you're like a student and you've done game development in like some school, that's what you do in a course, basically.
Yeah.
And I agree that that's kind of also kind of reflective on how dependent, especially smaller teams and companies who are not developing their own engine or something, have become of like the tools and the marketplaces and so on that kind of help us make the job easier.
Yeah, what I'm driving for is the key importance of low-level knowledge. The fact that many schools these days are teaching us how to use our fancy tools, but we lack the low-level knowledge of understanding how they work. We're also confusing art with the tools of art. Like if a kid is going to school to learn art, they should learn art, not to use Photoshop. There's a key difference here. You apply your understanding of art in the tools that you can learn elsewhere. But the fact is, like, after Unity is gone, there will be nobody left who knows how to code assembler.
And using your aspect just to say, what is your comment about? And again, sorry, I love Finland. I used to live here, but it's the only country I know so far that has esports as a university degree.
What?
Yes. You can actually have an university degree in esports.
Wow.
So
I'm not exactly sure which. I'm not familiar with.
Is amateur.
Okay, yeah.
But still, it's a degree course in esports. Like, please comment. Jani, please.
No comment.
Well, I mean, if you kind of agree with when you think it's a kind of either emergent form of entertainment, which it surely is, or then you can also call it a sport. Whether you do or not doesn't really matter. But I mean, if you're arguing about should it be taught in schools, most surely it should in some form. It's either sport or it's culture or it's something in between. But you would already see a lot of sports being taught in schools. Maybe not in Finland as much, but especially in the US, you have a lot of like sports management. Sports is a huge industry there, and also
but that's the point that I mean is that I was using the hook that Jani said about us teaching how to use Unity, but not teaching how to actually program and be able to create from it's the same thing. That's the point that I wanted to make, is that I have nothing against school teaching about esports, but they should be teaching about the whole process of it and how this can enhance interactivity and other aspects, instead of just having people there playing games all the time to be a good
I definitely agree, kind of. At least the stuff I've seen done at the lower levels, like kids that are 15 to 18, at least the people I know that do kind of educational work in that space, their courses are mostly about, because the kids are going to play the games anyway, and they're going to be a big part of their life. They're going to play, I don't know, let's say a moderate 6 hours a day or something. And they kind of they know the kids are going to do that, so they take the approach of maybe they should also learn some kind of skills that could add to that kind of in school, maybe like time management, actually kind of knowing what to go after when you're playing the game and so on. I think that's pretty important, much as with kind of learning how to be a good developer, learning how to be a good esporter, so on, is kind of someone teaching you kind of those tools that go along with that lifestyle you've chosen, and kind of you learn time management and so on, all these tools you might need going forward. That's a pretty good thing to have, I think.
Yeah, they're all useful tools, but you need to start with the basics. So, and there's no reason why you can't teach about things like teaching about esports. We're not talking about like college football. Hey, we're going to get guys that maybe aren't so great at academics, but boy, can they throw that ball back to the quarterback, and they go all the way through university. I don't think we would want to see that. Maybe universities do see that as an opportunity in the future. We see esports stars coming through colleges, can see it happening in the States. But do worry about just teaching platforms. It's like in web development, just teaching people how to use Dreamweaver. Gosh, that's showing my age. Macromedia's Dreamweaver. You know, rather than teaching them the understanding of HTML, you know, a structured markup language. You know, why, all of that. Now, you know, there's the same thing with games development. You know, if you teach kids, you know, I sat there in maths, you know, Euler, Quaternions, first player perspectives and how you need those angles in first player perspective games is like, oh, yeah, vector threes. What's this for? Oh, okay. Context. I think context is, you know, understanding the context of a generation and what motivates them and putting that down back to that low level is really important.
So you just essentially described the gamification of Quaternions.
I did, didn't I? That's weird.
Wow. Sort of kind of segueing back to future advice to young developers. Don't go to location-based gaming. GPS satellites have a lifespan of 8 years, and after that, they burn up in the atmosphere.
Yep.
And also, blockchain requires a global distributed network. So once that's gone and there's only splinternets remaining, yeah, not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, and also if you're from the UK, you'll be using a separate GPS satellite. Well, possibly if we ever get it built.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the apocalypse for you. My kind of idea behind that, kind of driving this vision is maybe to remind you that we shouldn't be pretending that things are okay, and we should be focused on growth of our mobile economy and how much money we're going to make out of games. There are decisions to be made today, even in our business of game development, that can affect what I've discussed from not happening, unless you really want to go there. It might be fun.
So what you're saying is we need to be aware of what the environmental situation is, that those existential issues are pertinent even in making games.
Well, they are, aren't they? We're in a blockchain connects, and already a few months ago, when the hype train was high on blockchain, we heard that mining bitcoins was taking up as much electricity as Ireland.
Yeah.
Except it was all happening near the coal mines of Mongolia. So these technologies have their physical effect in the environment that we're in. And perhaps one thing, I mean, sure, if you're Zynga and in the audience, King in the audience, or Supercell in the audience, why not really?
I don't think they came to see us.
No. You have the option of building your own solar farm, even. If not, and you just have a server farm, maybe as a customer you can just demand that the electricity for that server farm is generated from renewable sources. Like, it's a business decision you can make today.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you said that, because I would say that's the other thing is we've got to say as developers, as a developer community, no, we're not going to use tools that and agree to terms and conditions that are just blatantly counter-healthy for our society.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in that. I think maybe kind of if you don't think only about the environmental factors, but also kind of other responsibilities. I think a good example has been all these articles about Riot. If someone still doesn't use this thing called the internet, I haven't seen these articles, I urge you to go read them. They're pretty cringeworthy. I get really, really, really mad when I read them. I get really upset and angry at how kind of adult people can behave in such a way. That's like a really good example of how, of course, that's not only endemic to the kind of games industry in some way. I'm not going to blame all game developers. A lot of game developers are doing really good stuff in that field. But I think, yeah, these kind of really male-dominant companies can also kind of try to think about what they're doing, what kind of organizational culture they're fostering, also what kind of games they design, how those reflect on that. I think some of the first comments that came out after this Riot thing was like, oh, I'm not surprised, like the company is exactly like the player base, basically like toxic as hell, was like some of the first comments. and then reading all these first-hand encounters, that's pretty gruesome stuff. So yeah, be responsible.
Yeah, going on that line of being responsible, I think I will make a comment and you can agree and punch me and do whatever you want to do. But what bothers me in game industry nowadays is that everybody's talking about making money free to play, and it is a business, and I understand that. But when a company comes and say about doing a game that helps in charities or anything that has a social impact, they are even kind of laughed at. They are seen as not profitable, nobody wants to work with them, nobody thinks that they are serious enough. And I think it's about time, especially with the power that we have now, the financial power and the political power that games have in the world nowadays. I think it's extremely important that the companies start taking responsibility for what they are bringing into society, not only taking away from the users, taking big data and using the data as they want, but also using it for a constructive way in society and making it better for everybody, and also allowing indie developers to actually go through new routes, not trying to be the next big thing, but trying to find and forge new ways of being successful in this business. So, punch me now, go.
Well, I was talking to Christina Thorfish about this as the idea of acquisition. It's so the industry has become so Machiavellian and unpleasant. It feels toxic. But there's no reason why we couldn't, as developers, publish our own games. And I wanted to talk a bit about Epic, and why they were saying download our Android version. Obviously, they ain't going to get the Apple version off their website. But why they've raised the spectre of app stores. But we were saying, what about if developers publish games and said, we've got users, you've got a game, would you like some users? And then we take a little bit of money for that, and we go on, and you say, well, we make similar games, so actually our audiences, why can't we share them? So why can't we think in ways actually that are more sustainable, rather than how on earth how can we exploit a group of people? We should have that sense of responsibility.
So yeah, let's say that I agree with Paddy that the game industry as a whole should be aware of the full scope of what they do and how that influences things. In response to yours, I'm trying to keep my thought together here.
You're doing a great job.
No, passing on.
Forgot.
Back to him. Come back.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I mean, also I was trying to think when you said this whole picture sounded like you wanted to make your own app store, basically selling user acquisitions to the next company and so onwards.
So we couldn't we do something where we all group together, like in the old-fashioned days? Farmers did it in the UK. They did it really well, and it's called the co-op.
Yeah, I mean, and I know I'm no expert on game developers, but I know there are some co-ops, especially like in countries like France and other Central European countries, and that seems to be a kind of good way to work. Mainly, I guess those co-ops mainly work like it's one company where all the people kind of own a share of it and then get some kind of equal. Equal.
Jani.
Yeah, now I remember my point. But I found it really kind of curious that over the years, we're still working with the same app stores, and of course, the curious thing for me is that the app stores are built in such a way that you don't own your audience. You have to win your audience every time and time again. It's not even just for app developers. Even if you're someone who makes music on iTunes, how many years have we had iTunes? And there's not a single button on iTunes, there never has been, where I can just tell the system to notify me when there is a new album from the same artist. Like I can't get a notification if there's a new content from an artist I like. Every time, I mean, there are plenty of albums that I've totally missed. I didn't know that my favorite artist had made 5 albums in the last 10 years when I wasn't looking. But the same thing for app developers. We don't control. And the only things that we can do is try to get our Twitter followers or our email lists. But the actual notification for new content, time and time again, we have to go through the same fuzzy and difficult discovery mechanism. Instead of having a store that actually supports our business and lets us have our user base be automatically notified when we've made something, if they like the thing that we've done before. And I find that, well, disappointing.
It is disappointing, and also the poor users have got to negotiate when they buy their nice shiny phone because they've ditched their rotting Android phone, shame on them, that they've got to then agree to terms and conditions. Oh, that's fine, yeah, we've made them all 47 pages really clear to read in 5-point type. You know, how is that being fair on the user? And it certainly isn't being fair on the developer. Can we open source business terms?
Ooh.
But we're getting into the last minutes before I can ask, and I'm so happy that you guys still sticked around. I knew we would go berserk in this. So before I get the questions, it's a very simple. We try to go as deep as we can go in 30 minutes because it's a very short time and we could discuss way more than what we did. But to try to end in a kind of more uplifting tone. Bearing in mind your own expertise, what would be the advice that you would give to people to say, like, what is the immediate thing that people should start thinking now? Like, you're doing your game, you're working your business, what should you do? And I froze them.
I let the others think for a while. I'll go to one point which I've made in many presentations in years past, is the fact that we have sports, we have esports. When you think about sports, there's so many different sports. There's almost something for everyone, both to do, to watch, and so on. There's everything from boxing to ice hockey, figure skating, like if you take the big ones, and if you take small ones, like finish throwing your cell phone, throwing your boot, carrying your wife. I mean, these are all kind of some more or less suspect. But if you go to games, kind of what people think about as esports, there's maybe like 3 genres there, or maybe 4 if you're lucky. There's very few games that are kind of considered to be really kind of the sportification of games. So I would also encourage people to kind of think outside the box when developing games. Maybe maybe you could go into something like more artistic and make that. I mean, artistic in the sense that the player themselves can kind of express themselves kind of in like figure skating. Maybe that could be good and could be popular among a certain demographic. Maybe it gives them something new, something fun to do, something they'll play, something you'll then hence get maybe some livelihood from, and maybe something people like to watch. So maybe sometime try to think outside the box rather than create the 535th Battle Royale this year. That would be a cool idea.
That's a good advice.
This is something I've heard others, even smarter than me, say, a lot smarter than me, say a number of times about any game developer, any independent game developer at least. Like, things get more really formative and defined if you're a gaming startup and you go with venture capital and so forth. That locks your future trajectory into a very kind of fixed path. But if you don't do that, if you're actually indie, then define your own success. Like, don't listen to what the others are telling you your success should look like. Like, I mean, essentially, as an independent developer, what you want to be is profitable and make the games that you enjoy and your audience enjoys. And you have to be profitable for that, obviously. But defining that, like what you want out of game development, that's, I think, key.
Yeah, I'd echo what Jani said. And yeah, there's some great opportunities in sports, as Max has really beautifully highlighted. And I think, you know, you've got to make games. Just get out there and bloody make games. Yes, they're going to be crap games, but eventually you're going to make a great game. And somebody's actually going to pick up one of your crap games and go, oh, that's really cool. And so I think the other thing is, collaborate. Talk to each other. Definitely.
And on that tone, I actually would like to give an advice, because just going through what you guys are saying is not only that I know everybody talk about being profitable and making money. Just remember that in the end, it's not about getting rich, is not necessarily, it's about getting money enough for you to do your next game that you love and be able to live off what you love doing. I think a lot of the companies nowadays, it's great to aim higher. Everybody wants to be king and everybody wants to be EA. But in the end, if you can actually be a company that does the games that you love and live of it, you're more than successful. So just keep in mind that sometimes it's better to do what you love and do quality things that you feel proud of than to do the next battle royale, and you might make a lot of money out of it, but you're not actually improving anything in the business. So it's kind of... But on that tone, you guys, do you want to ask anything? God, okay, good.
Whoa, several questions.
Yeah, I have a question about what do you think about games evolving to esports? Example being the Fortnite game. It was first a game that was not free, you had to buy it, and it had a story. Then, a couple of years later, it became free with Battle Royale mode and hidden lore in it that is capable of esports. And a couple of years later, now they are gonna release it to the mobiles.
Well, yeah, I think first of all, people have different opinions on what makes a game kind of esports. For me, I think I can live with any kind of competitive game being esports. Usually, if you ask some kind of hard sports, esports person, they only think about like the big names like CSGO, League of Legends, so on, the things that have like millions and millions of viewers. For example, I would count something like speedrunning as esports as well. But going back to your questions, I think it's difficult, and I think a lot of companies would like to have that kind of secret blueprint as to how do I make a successful esport game, because that gathers a lot of attention, a lot of viewers, a lot of players, a lot of revenue. Well, I guess what they did with Fortnite turned out well. From what I've heard, it was kind of like someone just in-house had made like a Battle Royale as kind of a side thing, kind of a small fun mode, and then they had it ready when the kind of time was critical to take on the kind of PUBG success. But of course, it's something I think if you are interested in making your game kind of competitive multiplayer and so on, I think going towards the esports route with all the tournaments and all the circuits and all that can be a good thing to do. It just requires a lot of investment both in time and these days also in money, because it used to be a time where you could spend, let's say, have $100,000 prize pool and that would gather a lot of attention. It would be the biggest tournament of the year, but these days there's so much money in there that if you're a small company, good luck.
We have a question here.
Hi, thanks for the interesting talk. I have a few questions. Is that okay? Well, first off, I would like to hear your opinion on the development budget, since people keep talking about how expensive it is to develop games, and then something like, well, especially in the AAA market, but then something like Hellblade happens that didn't cost as much but looks just as good. So at this point I've been thinking whether or not these games are just misbudgeted or something. I mean, I would like to hear your opinion on that.
Does anyone have an opinion on that?
Well, again, any software project can be expensive, and you can incur costs because of unknown things that come up. That's just the way it goes. That's software, that's showbiz. But Yeah, I mean, sometimes games, AAA titles, they can cost 60 million plus for lots of, because you've got the marketing, you've got all of that. But yet sometimes, isn't it quite freeing just to say, let's just sit down, we've got the machine, we know how to write a code, we can just make a game and get it out there. It's fun.
There's that, but also for Hellblade, I don't think they even themselves profiled the title exactly as AAA. I mean, personally, as a one-man team, I'm not. I mean, we're a team of 5 or 6 people, but even alone, I could make a AAA title with a scope of half second.
Yeah. Yeah, I could do a nice loading screen for it.
So it really is a matter of, like, yes, you can push the visual quality to a certain extent and then make a gameplay around that. But so I don't think anything is misbudgeted. It's really of how they define their scope and how much of a sandbox the world is, how expensive or expansive its landscape and so forth.
Yeah.
I'm gonna defer from answering this because I think you two have much better understanding of the kind of budgeting portions of this. I'm just gonna say that what you mentioned about software, it's also true for example, construction. If you take our dear metro extension or our dear Finnish nuclear power plant, which is now I think the second or most expensive building in the world. That's very impressive.
I'm allowing him one more question because he said he had several.
Oh, well, yes, sorry.
Yeah, I only had one more. Okay, so something bit more recent. I'm not gonna take any side on this, but the whole Battlefield 5, and I think you know where I'm going with this. I would like to hear your opinion on how the social media will affect the future of game development and whatnot.
Go, Jani.
Does that give you your answer?
Can I just ask Chris, like, I don't know, has there been one or many controversies around Battlefield 5, just to kind of clarify if we know what I'm talking about?
John, I don't know, that's been you, but I think the one was just that, one was just that people said, I think so one of, well, what's the one on the marketing guy who said, like, if you don't like it, don't buy it? Because basically people were saying that, hey, this isn't the Battlefield that we were expecting or whatever. Like, that was one of them, but I don't remember if there was anything else. But,
Yeah, well, I'm a Battlefield 3 fan. Oh, seriously, I'm also a Mass Effect fan. So you can imagine how I'm bitching and whinging about Anthem. But hey, and I've played Battlefield from the start, and it did hit that point, and I think you could probably see where it intersects with the rise of social media and how the game now has changed so much to reflect trends on social media. I'm out. I just want to play a game that I really enjoy.
Jani is getting red.
Yeah.
Go for it, man.
No, I mean, we've gone from Minecraft to Minefield. So, yeah, and I mean, it's a triple-edged sword. So on one hand, you want to have your loyal fan base, and there's anecdotal evidence of studios finding their own fan base, which is aligned with their communication and so forth. I mean, Landfall games. Which one is it?
Landfall.
Yeah, I mean, Minna. Yeah, so they're awesome, and the guys who make this totally accurate battle simulator and then cluster truck and these sort of games. I mean, there's a fine example of engaging with your community and having in-game tools and Twitch integration that allows people to kind of chime in when things are happening. And when it's like that, it's awesome. And if your social media manager is so talented that things can end up with that, then yes, great. And then there's the other side of it, where if you fail the expectations of your audience, then it can suddenly become a very, very defensive position for you to be in. And I have no answer to that. I'm saying that it's still a minefield, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't see why developers should have to feel like they've got to justify the idea of having a one-armed lady in a World War II situation. you know, is it, you're having to combat things like cultural misappropriation, gender equality. You go, well, I'm more worried about, is that library that I've just integrated into my code base gonna play nice? It is a minefield, and I think it's also a distraction as well. And when you see very grand companies like BioWare, I can understand why they want to make sure they're tapping it into an audience. But I would say is social media the audience? It's more, it's a virtualization of a group of people.
No, there is a comedian that I love called Bill Burr, that he actually said something that is brilliant, that it goes well with what you said. That he said that 2% of the social media are assholes. No, the other way around, sorry. 2% of the social media are nice people and 98% of assholes or something like that. But he said the point was that the people that are verbal are only the assholes. Even if 98% of the people are nice and the 2% are assholes, the ones that are actually verbal, like constantly, are usually the assholes, because the people that like the game not always are they like something, they don't always criticize openly, but the people that hate it are very oral about everything. So it's hard to judge based on that, because you know it's not the full scope, it's only the very loud people that are talking. But we do have to finish. We already exploded everything. Again, like the last panel of every day is like an hour and nobody goes away, so it's kind of fun. But before we go, I had only one question. From all of you that were here, how many of you were game developers or indie developers interested in game development before you came to this panel? Heads up. How many of you still want to make games? Oh, yeah. Good. Wow. You didn't break anybody.
Yeah,
good.
Brilliant.
Or if we broke one or two, they're going to be fine.
That's to be expected.
Counselling will be provided after the service.
So, guys, thank you very much. And Max, I hope we didn't scare you too much.
It was great. It was great.
Guys, thank you very much.